Could you please start today by telling me about your economic plan?
Sure. Affordability is the number one issue I come across as I've traveled the state. I'm the only candidate in this race to visit all 102 counties, and everywhere I go, the number one issue on people's mind is affordability. People cannot afford to live. Now, there's a couple things that we can do to help that. Number one is the cost of groceries. Number two is the cost of energy. When it comes to groceries, we need to enforce existing anti-monopoly law that's already on the books. But corporations get away with price gouging because they use their tremendous wealth to then shield themselves from the laws that are already on the books and to lobby to make the laws weaker, such as our existing anti-monopoly laws. So we need to strengthen and enforce our existing anti-monopoly laws to stop price gouging at the corporate level. I saw this firsthand. For example, when I was stationed at the Pentagon, I went to the commissary, which is a public grocery store that is a nonprofit and receives government subsidies. So it cannot sell any of its products for a profit. It sells it at the market value of what it costs to shelve it and keep the lights on. I would buy the dog food from the commissary, and that same dog food just outside the base at a Kroger would be $10 more expensive. It'd be $15 at the commissary, it'd be $25 just outside the base. So price gouging is very real, and corporations get away with it because they use their tremendous wealth to influence our elections through campaign contributions, dark money, and super PACs. Another issue that affects the pocketbook is the cost of energy. Specifically here in Illinois, we are transitioning from coal to renewable energies. The problem, we are shutting down coal power plants before we have adequate supply from renewable energies to replace the supply from coal. So the demand is remaining the same, but the supply is getting diminished, which means companies like Amazon are having to import energy from out of state, which is increasing the cost to the consumers. I met a couple in Havana, Illinois, who told me that overnight their electric bill doubled in the matter of 1 month. From one bill to the next, it doubled. Usage was the same. So one way that we can help alleviate this is by implementing aspects of the Green New Deal to prioritize the investment in renewable energies across the nation. We cannot do this kind of piecemeal thing. We need a complete national overhaul to make climate change a central focus. And the Green New Deal is a great way to approach that while investing in our rural communities. So if we're able to lower the cost of energy by massive federal investment in renewable energies, which it's already cheap, wind and solar are already cheaper than coal and regular fossil fuels. So we just have to invest in it and make that the new norm, and that will drive down the price of energy. And then if we enforce existing anti-monopoly laws against corporations in the grocery store chains, then we can reduce inflation and price gouging.
Thank you very much. Now, do you believe that the American dream has become unaffordable?
Yes, it has become unaffordable. And I know it's a popular thing for like affordability is a popular word to say right now. And as a member of the working class, I mean, I'm a public school teacher and a union member, the only union member in this race. I find it rich when multi-million dollar or multi-millionaires who are in Congress receiving salaries of close to $180,000 a year to talk about affordability. What do you know about affordability? You're a millionaire. So I think one way that we can make policies that will make life more affordable is to totally change our political landscape by removing the corrupting influence of money in politics. Because right now, the people we elect, the trait that we elevate, are those who are really good at fundraising, those who are independently wealthy or are able to get their independently wealthy friends to donate to their campaigns and bankroll ad campaigns for them. Those are the people who get elevated, and they're the ones running the country. And then the 1% that donate to those campaigns, they make sure that those people running the country protect the profits that increase the wealth of the 1%. So that's why life has become unaffordable for the rest of us down here, because we don't actually have representation. I think that, excuse me, and when you hear these members of Congress talking about the affordability crisis, who are millionaires, they're using it to score political points as opposed to doing anything meaningful to actually help the rest of us. The first thing that they could do is take money out of politics by passing an amendment to the Constitution. We can do this. 72% of Americans, including 71% of Republican voters, want campaign spending limits. We can pass this if they would try to do anything about it. But Democrats love to campaign on campaign finance reform. They don't actually lift a finger to do anything about it. And that's why I'm running my campaign differently. I'm trying to make the American dream affordable again by making our government work for all of us, not just the 1%. And we do that by ratifying an amendment to the Constitution that says three things. One, money's not speech. Two, corporations are not people. And three, Congress has the authority to regulate spending in elections. We do this and then we pair it with publicly financed campaigns. We eliminate the influence of money in politics. We insulate our government from the corrupting influence of the 1% trying to use their tremendous wealth to control our policy. And then we will start electing majorities who are more representative of the people, more responsive of the people. And then we will see legislation that helps the people afford to live and to give their children a better life than they themselves had.
Thank you. Uh, Now, very sorry about that. Would you have voted yes or no on the Epstein Files Transparency Act?
I would have voted yes.
Did you want to expound upon that, or just simply you would have voted yes?
Yeah, I mean, I would vote yes. I think that we need to now enforce it now that it is public law, because there are still redactions that have not been made public, and this administration is just using one thing after another to distract from the full transparency and following what is now public law. And I think it's important to remember that this is about the victims and justice for the victims and making sure that everyone who is implicated, who may have conducted any form of sexual violence, needs to be held accountable, regardless of what party they're from, regardless of what position they hold, regardless of how much money they have. These people must be held accountable. And that's why, of course, I would support or vote yes on this act.
Thank you. Now, would you have voted yes or no on the Stop Illegal Entry Act of 2025?
I would have voted no on that act. I believe it's they're misusing a very real issue to try and crack down on legal immigration. And so I believe in an enforceable border. I believe we have to have a streamlined process for labor to freely cross the border, just like capital can freely cross borders and shield itself from taxation. So we need to have a more streamlined process to allow migrants to come into this country legally. And that act does not allow for that.
Now, these next couple questions, they're going to go from stuff very Illinois centric to more federal as we go on. This first one being, according to census data, Illinois lost almost 300,000 people between the last two censuses, while the US as a whole gained a 7% growth in population. What needs to be done to make Illinois a state that sees population growth over the next decade?
I think it has a lot to do with our regressive taxes, because that's another aspect that comes into the affordability crisis. And what I hear from people as I travel across the state, we place the burden at the state level government. The burden of taxation is placed on working families and not the ultra wealthy. We could follow in Massachusetts' suit and have a wealth tax. People didn't just get up and leave as they thought, because the reality of the matter is, if you're ultra wealthy, you have the money to choose to live wherever you want to live. And so the ultra wealthy in Chicago will not leave if we implement a wealth tax and make it graduated. We also need a graduated income tax. I know that requires a public referendum and an amendment to the Constitution, but we need to bring that up and push that again so that we transfer the burden of taxation away from working families onto the ultra wealthy to fund the programs that we need. And if we do that, then we're going to help make the cost of living more affordable. Because everywhere I go, everyone thinks that they just get taxed for every single thing they do, and they're not wrong. And part of this problem is that in the Illinois state government, half of our elections are uncontested. So half of the state legislature and the General Assembly in 2024, they did not face an opponent in either the primary or the general election. That is not democracy. That is not being representative. That's not being responsive to the people. And so we need to get rid of partisan primaries and just have an open primary, an open preliminary election. We need ranked choice voting. We need to take money out of politics. And most importantly, we need publicly financed campaigns. One of my opponents in this race always talks about, not taking corporate PAC money and wanting to take money out of politics. But she's been in office for the last 7 years, and we don't have publicly financed campaigns in Illinois. So what does that say about are we being serious about making more competitive elections? I think the Democratic Party needs to take a hard look at itself, take its hands off of the wheel a little bit, give up control, and allow competitive elections to happen so that we can elect more representative and more responsive governments that will not continuously tax the people of Illinois to the point where they move to a new state because the taxes are so high.
You. Now, this question involves the government shutdown during last year. Senator Durbin was one of the few Democratic senators that voted with Republicans to reopen the government. If you were in Durbin's position, would you have done the same?
No, I would not have. And here's my thought on government shutdowns. Government shutdowns are, first of all, imaginary. They don't need to happen. They are a political cudgel that both parties use. And at the end of the day, it's just the American people who suffer whenever there's a government shutdown. Federal workers are not getting paid, and the American people who pay federal income taxes are not getting access to the services that they need. Excuse me. And so, um, instead of having this like shutdown debacle and like threatening to shut down, we need to have an automatic continuing resolution, an ACR, that says whenever there's an elapse in appropriations, the government will continue to be funded based on the previous appropriations for the next, you could put a timeline on it, like 30, 45, 60 days, or until new appropriations are ratified or passed into public law. That way, we don't have to have this whole debacle about, oh, we're threatening a shutdown or not. It's just an imaginary problem used by both parties to try and gain political leverage. So we don't need to have it. But if you're going to use it, which the Democrats chose to do, then you better commit to it. You cannot tiptoe into it and then tiptoe out. It just damages Americans. It hurts the American people. It hurts federal employees, and it doesn't do anything for the Democratic Party. And so if we're entering into the shutdown and they make demands, you better wait until they make those demands and vote no on that. And so that's for the same very reason why I would not support Chuck Schumer to be continued to serve as the leader of the Democratic caucus in the United States Senate, because he chose to use a shutdown when that was not the best method to go with. And then he showed a complete lack of leadership in either orchestrating a public charade where only a few senators voted with Republicans and saying he had no idea about it, or he truly has no leadership and cannot control the caucus. In either case, he should not continue to serve as the caucus leader.
You? No. Polling shows that at least 70% of Americans believe biological males should have no place in women's sports. Earlier, or this past year, uh, Illinois Senators Duckworth and Durbin voted no on the Protect Women in Sports Act. How would you have voted in that? Should biological males be able to compete in girls' sports in high schools in Illinois?
So when it comes to young people who are trans, I think it's important to remember that this is not a decision. It's not like I'm just going to choose to be the other gender. It's a self-realization, and it's a very hard thing to come out publicly with. So young people do not make these decisions lightly. And for that reason, it's important to respect them and allow them to be the person that they want to be. And that includes participating in sports. So I think it's perfectly fine for high schoolers to for them to participate in the sport that they are that in the gender that they see themselves as.
Thank you. Two more questions. Now, with the passage of the Big Beautiful Bill this past year, we got a no tax on tips. However, Illinois, along with Maine and the District of Columbia, have decided not to accept that and continue to tax on tips. Do you support taxing tips?
I mean, it would be great to that's like one yeah, like great way to move the tax burden away from the working people, to have a no tax on tips. I think we need to go a little bit further to just, and not just for servers, but for to remove regressive taxes from all working class people, or at least remove the vast burden of that to the ultra well. But when it comes to the no tax on tips that they passed, I mean, it's only for I believe 3 years, and it's up to a maximum amount anyway. So it's really wasn't a genuine no tax on tips. It's very limited in both scope and scale. So yes, I would support a no tax on tips as a measure of a broader tax reform where we remove the burden of tax from working families to the ultra wealthy.
Thank you. And this last question. There were multiple bills surrounding artificial intelligence floating around Congress, many of them with bipartisan support. What kind of guidelines, safeguards, and policies do you think the federal government needs to implement to keep Americans safe from AI and to keep Americans from losing jobs to AI?
Well, first of all, we need to start electing a new generation that understands AI, emerging technologies, the singularity. Uh, we can't rely on people from a bygone era to try and regulate these things. They don't fully understand these things. So first of all, in Illinois, we've seen a proliferation of AI data centers and the environmental impacts and societal impacts on that. We're starting to see firsthand. And so I believe Illinois needs to place a moratorium on AI data centers. I would also like to see a moratorium nationally on AI data centers until we can regulate both energy and environmental impacts that are coming out of the proliferation of these data centers. When it comes to AI generated images and AI generated audio, I believe we need to have authorize the FCC to mandate watermarks on AI generated materials so that people know that this is not real, that this was created by AI. And we need to have steep enforceable fines to ensure that people comply with this law. And we need to be able to enforce it. And we need to empower the FCC to be able to enforce this. So those are two ways that we can immediately start to address some of the growing concerns of the proliferation of AI. And then I think we need to the Congress needs to set up a select committee to really get into all of the factors of how AI, particularly with jobs, how we can address these things because there are so many nuanced and large impacts that AI is going to have in the next 10, 20 years. And we can't just piecemeal this together. We need to have a working group and a coalition come together and figure out the impacts that's going to have on our society and how we can best regulate it. But at the end of the day, it must be regulated. And whether that means by its own federal agency or by putting it under the FCC, I believe we need some executive agency to regulate AI.
All right. I really appreciate you taking the time with me today. Where can people find you and about you and about your campaign?
Yeah, so you can one keep an eye out for our bus traveling across the state. It's a big green bus. It says Kev on it, and it's got all these signatures of well wishes and hopes for the future that people write on it as we go along. But if you don't see our bus, you can raising and spending millions of dollars on TV ads. We rely on organic grassroots messaging through social media, and by doing
So
so,
sorry, you froze when you said if you don't see our bus, could you please
oh
start? I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
sorry. Okay. Um, If you don't see our bus, you can go to kevinryan.com and learn all about me, the campaign, and our issues. You can also find our links to our social media there. And this is how we are getting our message out. Because if we want to take money out of politics, we need to elect people who reject money in politics. And that's what we're doing. Instead of raising and spending millions of dollars on TV ads, I'm raising only what I need to pay my staff a livable wage and to pay for food, fuel, and lodging when we're on the road connecting with voters in person. And that's why I'm happy to say I'm the only candidate in this race to speak with thousands of voters in all 102 counties. And from social media, we've reached over 8 million people, 8 million people with over 21 million impressions without spending a dollar on advertising. Because when your message works, it sells itself. We are redefining political viability. So if you think the status quo is working, if you want more of the status quo, then there are three great establishment candidates that you can choose from. But if you think they delivered us into the broken status quo we now find ourselves in, like I do, then come aboard our bus because we're talking about real change. We're not just campaigning on hot topic issues. We're campaigning with a plan to change our government, to make our government work for all of us by removing the corrupting influence of money in politics. I'm Kevin Ryan, and you can learn more at kevinryan.com.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much. And this next question is literally not anything to do with the interview at all. I'm just very curious. What kind of bus is it?
It's a great question. It is a 2002 Chevy Bluebird with a cat engine.
Okay. And is the inside got beds or is it like office? Like what?
It's an office space. Yep. So we do have we have a kitchen table with two bench seats, and then two couches, which the kitchen table can drop into a bed, and then the two couches can serve as beds too. So we try not to sleep on it. We can't, I mean, we can't now because it's just too cold. But over the summer and the fall, we would sleep on it if, when we're in some of the remote places of Illinois where there are no hotels. And so we would sleep on it when we needed to. But we do try to stay in hotels because it's not the most comfortable.
I get it. Whenever October rolls around, I use all my time off and I travel with the circus. And for the past couple of years, we've been using a bus. So I'm very familiar with living on a bus, traveling around. So I'm very curious in that just regard because it's not an easy thing to do.
No,
Travel,
it's not. No, it's not.
not at all. But
And I don't know. Before this campaign, I didn't know anything about diesel mechanics, and I do now. Unfortunately, I know a lot about diesel mechanics.
oh yeah, completely. Yep, that'll happen. We had one where we broke down side of Indiana, highway in Indiana, and it was like, oh yeah, oil was low, and then a bearing shot through the engine. Like, oh cool, great. And then we had one where the bus kept breaking down. We had given up on it, like we'd started the tour with it, and we were like, you know what, it broke down 6 times within the first couple of days, so let's just drive ourselves. It was not a good time. But
Yeah, our bus. Luckily, we only broke down twice. One was in Chicago, not too far from the garage I take it to, which was very convenient. But the other time, we were on our way, we were in the middle of Marshall County on our way to Wyoming, Illinois, and Stark County. And we were on a small county road in the middle of giant cropland. And we had a catastrophic engine failure. And the sun had just set. And this was a couple weeks ago. And then I got outside and opened the hood and looked for like leaks or loose fittings, or maybe I thought maybe the transmission line got loose and was leaking or something. Didn't see any of that, and I was out there for like 30 seconds, and the wind swept prairie plains. That there was like a 40-mile-an-hour wind. I felt like I was on the Titanic. My
yeah.
my hands went numb, and I had to get back on the bus. And luckily, we got rescued and we got the bus towed and got taken care of. But that was not a great place to break down.